woman by age 13. It was some seedy rite initiated on a night by a drunken older brother, or a mentor, or a father. Beacon's father, though, Lewis Thomas, had fought to rid their city of the harems. It was a strange institution, he'd argued, and by Beacon's time, there were no harems left in the city. Most of the women were married, a few were drifting rejects wandering beneath the dome, and fewer still were ostracized, mummifying right there out on the surface of Mars. Though the Martian population was vastly male, there were still women born there, as one would expect. But also, as one would expect, a woman belonged to a coveted class. She was hidden away from other families as soon as she took her first birthing cry, and the doctors and the parents saw who she was. Hidden, veiled, protected, but with reason. Warrior houses, House Williams, House Smith, organized raids. They sprung from hiding spots in cargo trucks, rose from sewer tunnels to capture women and enslave them, hoping to increase their numbers. Why were so many people infertile? Nobody knew. Radiation from space, radiation from fusion. Nobody knew. One baby in a family was fantastic, and two was an American miracle. Everybody hoped to increase their numbers. A universal factor for life everywhere in the universe. Everybody hopes to increase their numbers. So rather than just sit and hope, so many Martians rose to act. If Mother Nature would not give them more children, maybe they should just rape her and take them. It wasn't always a Smith or a Williams, but it often was, wasn't it? Beacon refused to become that. So as the years passed, he felt a profound anxiety about women. What would they expect of men if so many were like the Williams or the Smiths of the world? Beacon was terrified of recognizing that look in her eyes upon looking down and looking back up at him, that he wasn't enough. That when the day finally came, he would never be man enough, that he wouldn't be hard enough, or keep it up long enough, or buck deep enough. He was afraid he just wasn't enough. So in the end, rather than maybe face the fact he wasn't enough for somebody, or face the fact that nobody was enough for anyone, or face the fact that enough was never enough anyway, and it didn't make half an ounce of difference, Beacon just didn't do anything, and he was nobody at all. Until this day on the ship, because it was selection. He knew it was unavoidable then, his status would be revealed, and because MDMA was his best friend, he decided he should tell them all. The Martians, the Venusians, men and women, why not? He loved everybody. He cleared his throat. Fellas, he began. His voice was weak, but very happy. And ladies, I've decided I should tell you, Martians, Venusians, men and women, why not? I love everybody. I just want to say, but he stopped in an instant. He stopped because he was being selected by his favorite. For a fraction of a second, he hesitated. Should someone else have stepped toward first? But then she acted with decisiveness. It was him. This was the one. Maybe she'd made that choice already. Maybe even back when they captured them and attacked him during the raid on the Martian ship, she recalled to him later. What was the impetus of this choice making on this ship? The firm step she took, taking him by the wrist, taking him away to her bedroom. He was lost watching her walk. He forgot to look back. It was a Spartan room, no adornment behind the mirror in the bed, and all of that built into stainless steel wall, black sheets. She pushed him down on the end of the bed. He said. What could he say? How could he say it? She unzipped herself from her jumpsuit in one fluid motion. At first, he tried to keep his gaze focused into her eyes, but he couldn't resist. He stared at her body, admiration, 2 handfuls of breasts, the rest of her suited strength like his own, but much stronger. Lean definition beneath the dark caramel skin, her scars, her power. But what would she taste like, he wondered? Was it okay to want her body? Did it make him a Williams if he wanted her body? He said. But shouldn't we talk? Then she closed in on him, pulling him by the neck. And then he could taste the bitter and the sweet of her sweat, the scent sour, gorgeous, flower toxic, kissing her neck like a bite, and biting hard, and a sigh, a growl, and he brought her nipples into his mouth, one and then the other. It was purely instinct by this point, him watching himself in the mirror behind the bed, pushing her down to the sheets, the way he saw himself. See her cease to be a person and instead an assemblage of a woman, and feeling how he pushed his face between her legs and sucked her into his mouth, pushing and pulling, twisting her clit around, and then the fingers inside and this rippled spot to push on. Had he the faculty to think, he wondered where the fuck did he learn to do this, or where this impulse arose and why it seemed to come from heat in his blood. He repeated the motion, minutes, skin so hot, repeating it like he could escape this, listening her breath faster, until he leaned down and she choked him and told him not to stop, and he couldn't, and finally she let out a cry and came mightily, tightening around his fingers and shoved him down back on the floor, and she and Beacon both gasped for air, laughing as if it was the first time they needed breath. Holy fucking God, she gasped. What was that? Was that good? Beacon asked. Was that enough? Jesus Christ, none of you people do that. Beacon laughed. I don't know. He thought to ask her name, but then she pulled back. She pulled her legs up. He couldn't help but stare at her then, no more mystery about what women looked like. And then he looked back to her face, her heaving chest, the fueled stare burning holes in him, lust or hate, wanting sex, wanting death. Take your jumpsuit off and fuck me. So he did as she commanded, ripping at the zipper, struggling to pull it off. It got stuck around his ankles. He looked down at himself, though. His thighs were shaking, and he was only as stiff as bean curd. She already knew, moving toward him, taking his cock from him, sucked it into her mouth, staring him in the eyes. Something about her eyes. He couldn't break away her eyes, just watching her pull him in and out and in and out. The heat in her eyes as he seemed to say, what about it? Say I can't, say I can, say you will, say you beg, all these things until he grew and grew. And she ran her teeth down the length of him. He pulled himself out. It wasn't pain, but he was afraid he'd come in her mouth if there was a second of this. She pulled her legs up again and held his cock at the base. Now it was hard as a uranium rod. And then, finally, for the first time in his short life, he entered a woman. My God, it was so hot, he thought, the first moment, softer than anything imaginable. He started to move, to thrust the motion. Oh, but it came in just more than he ever had, in just 6 or 7 seconds inside her. It felt like he'd never be so empty. But he was. And then he fell back on the bed, panting and panting, no more breath. Everything drained from him. It was amazing. He laughed. Gee golly, sex with another person, with a woman. He had no idea how amazing it could be, the heat, the warmth. He admitted he was unsure where MDMA began and ended, and lust began and ended, but he couldn't speak for this burning empty inside of him, who he'd come to call bliss. She pulled away for a moment and returned with a cigarette, metal clink of the Zippo. She propped herself up on one elbow and studied Beacon with a curious expression. What's your name? He asked her. Something about you is not like them. Addie would never tell him her name. This was Addie's first mission, and when she had been assigned to breed by the state. She welcomed it partly for the general reasons all of them welcomed it. If she could conceive, she could stop working on this slaver, the worst assignment of all. One could not avoid one's duty lest one wished to be disappeared by the state into the cloud tops of Venus to fall to the surface, to hell. But she dreaded it for the general reasons they all dreaded it. She had to fuck over and over again. A group of disgusting Martians who were probably not fertile. So few people were fertile now. Why hadn't anybody devised a way to be impregnated without doing it the old-fashioned way? Though sometimes any sex was better than no sex. Addie was happy, at least, that these people were only minors. The warriors were the only ones she'd ever known. The warriors were all chest and all cock, strutting, so proud. They carried years' worth of muscle tightened by repetitions of hatred for their perceived enemies. Martians thought they could never be bested by a woman. It was just a coincidence. It was an off day. So the Venusians would make it a point to break their egos. It was so easy for her and the others to hate them. Captain Carney told them stories, the sickening things they'd done to her in the harem while she was a slave on Mars. The old-fashioned fetters, the laughter like lashings, and lashings like knife swipes, and knife nicks like spider bites, and humiliation, and the way they tried to ruin her body with rape, the way they said bitch and slut and cunt, and how it rolled off their tongues as they worked to try and tear her apart in the weeks that she would have needed to heal, but the hours they gave her instead, and the years she endured this violence before she was thrown back to Venus, and I hope you can't imagine it, because I fucking can't. The years she endured, somehow thrown back unbroken, somehow thrown back, still strong enough to hate them with every ounce of her blood, but thrown back. So it was easy for her to hate the Martians, them, look at them. The way they stood so fucking smug, even after they'd been defeated. The way they cocked their heads to the side, sizing women up, considering which would be the easiest one to take the upper hand from, to turn the tide so badly against her she'd be afraid to tell what fucking happened to her. Look at them. It was easy for her to hate them for their ignorance, so Carney made it a point only to take the fresh Martians who'd never been captured. They'd all heard about it from their elders and simply ignored the past, so she fucking hated them. And it was easy to turn a blind eye from the port windows to see what their sisters did to these swine-faced savages, clawing, biting, beating, lashing, sodomizing, finger-snapping, fist-fucking, piercing, scarification, and all these tortures sometimes committed with howling rage, sometimes with cold calculation, but always with universal hate. Always from a wrath, from a fundamental and ancient part of being, from ancestral inequity, millennial revenge. The Martians would stand weaker and weaker and weaker with every passing day. They would weaken until the day there was no more light in their eyes, only the dull, faraway stare of absolute capitulation. The day they'd been tamed, and that was the day that they let them go. And here was Addie choosing Beacon again. She chose him before too. Yeah, it was Beacon, so naive. Yet she didn't feel any of this hate or revenge yet. She only heard the first man that she chose might be different than the others. Thank you.